What is up, guys? This is Kyrim from the Trinity of Lift, and today I'm actually back with another episode of Path to Perfection, the weekly series where I select a deck, we go over my main deck, extra deck, and side deck choices, and we just kind of try and look to improve my deck over the next couple of weeks. Now, I actually decided to actually bring this series back with the Performage Shaddolls just due to the fact that first of all, I showed you guys the Clown Blade profile. Then I actually did the tournament report on the performance deck. And then I kid you not when I say about maybe a day or a couple hours after I uploaded that other tournament report video, I actually did change the list again. So just with how much times I've been changing around this list, I decided, hey, let's actually try and make the series Path to Perfection back again with this deck. I know you guys might be getting a little bit sick of seeing Shadolls, but currently I don't have any other decks built or ready to show off yet. But I will ensure that soon, and I mean very soon, there will be some pretty cool decks that will be getting filmed and uploaded onto the channel. But for now, it's going to be yet another Shaddoll video. But yes, like I said, it is going to be Performage Shaddolls today. And again, there's not too many changes, but there is some notable ones that I will get to as soon as we get to them. So of course, starting off with the Shaddolls, we have our 3 Shaddoll Squamata just because of the fact that it helps us deck thin. And of course, we want to deck thin our deck as much as possible so we can see our Performage cards, as well as our fusion cards and all that kind of good stuff. Then following that, we have the 2 Dragon because we want to hit key back row like lose 1 turn and skill drain, which can actually just really ruin our day. So of course we have the 2 Dragon just to help us kill those powerful floodgates. Then following that, we have our 2 copies of Shaddoll Hedgehog to search out our fusion spells. Then we have actually 2 Shaddoll Falco. Now, I actually had to cut space in this deck for a few key cards that I wanted to include. So, after talking about it with my brother and thinking about it for a little bit, I decided to actually cut Falco back to 2 just because of the fact that in this specific deck, I feel that the Necros matchup isn't as bad as it was before, as Shaddolls obviously got a little bit of a boost with the Performage engine. So I felt that 3 Falco in order to try and grind out our opponent wasn't as necessary, and Falco is more or less a card that we use whenever we need it. So of course we have the 2 Falco. And then finally, of course, we have the 2 copies of Shaddoll Beast because Shaddoll Beast helps us deck thin as well as helps us draw cards. So we have the 2 Shaddoll Beasts to round off our Shaddoll lineup. Moving on to the more generic support, we have our 3 copies of Mathematician just because of the fact that it can send us any performance that we might want into our graveyard, as well as it can help us also get any of our Shadolls into the graveyard. Also, another key card that we can use Mathematician to get into the grave is Glow Up Bulb. So of course we have the Mathematicians for that. Next up, for our Performage engine, we have the 2 copies of Trick Clown, the 3 copies of Damage Juggler to search out our Trick Clown, as well as help us search out our 2 copies of Hat Tricker. Now, again, this is the pretty solid Performage engine that I am running. I know a lot of people, especially from that YCS Toronto and the YCS Rimini, actually running things like 2-2-2, but I feel Damage Juggler is important because of the fact that sometimes you can end up with a fairly weak board that your opponent can't punch through. So the Damage Juggler at 3 is just really important for me, just because of the fact that it can help you prevent getting OTK'd by things like Necros and Clayfort. So that is still why I do run the 3 Damage Juggler for my Performage engine. Moving on, we actually have a new monster in the monster lineup for me. We have 1 copy of Gigabyte. Now, much like if you guys watched the tournament deck profile about how I didn't have an Oitalis Axis when I did want it, I decided to actually put Gigabyte into this deck to actually test around because of the fact that it is a water monster, as you guys can obviously see right there, and it's basically kind of like the sense of Hat Tricker, where it is a free summon whenever you have a Spellcaster type monster on your side of the field. So because of that, it can help you get into your rank 4 plays, but also it is again a water, so it can help you get into your Onoya Tylus. And again, in my opinion, it's another good free summon that actually just helps you get into other kinds of plays that you might actually want to go into. So that is why I do have the 1 copy of Gigabyte. Then, of course, we have the 2 copies of Veiler because we do not like the Necrosif Trishula and the regular Trishula and all those kinds of bad cards. So, of course, we have the 2 Effect Veiler to help us with that. We have the 1 copy of Glow Bulb to make our Trishula plays really live and really fast. So, of course, we have the 1 Glow Bulb to help us with that. And then, of course, we have the 1 Saki Blackluster Soldier because it's Blackluster Soldier. Of course, we have to have it. So that'll be it for the monster lineup. Moving on to the spells, again, it's pretty much the same as last time. It's 3 Shaddoll Fusion and 3 copies of El Shaddoll Fusion. Again, I don't have to go over much just because of the fact that I did go over it before. And of course, it's just really good, not just because it can help you get your things like your Trick Clowns and your Performages into Grave. Now, I'm also running 3 copies of Stir Goblin. I did find room to actually put this into the deck. And I know I've been preaching that you don't need Upstart in this deck, or in Shaddolls in general, just because of the fact that you do have 3 Skomata. But after a lot of playtesting, I decided to actually try and fit the upstarts in, just because I wanted to have even more consistency within my deck, and I just wanted to be able to see my performance combo cards as well as my fusions and whatnot just that much faster. So I did find room for the 3 upstarts. Then for the last couple of spells, we only have 2 more. We have the 1 copy of Foolish and the 1 copy of Soul Charge. Now, I felt like Raigeki as a single card was something that sure is fairly helpful in the sense that it can help us get around big boards, but after testing around with it, without Raigeki, I should say, I found that Raigeki wasn't as important because of the fact that most of the time, this card right here can actually get over anything that you'd be wanting to Raigeki anyway. So I really just wanted to try without Raigeki, and in my opinion, it's still fairly decent. You really don't need Raigeki in specific matchups because, again, like I said, your Nephilim can usually beat over anything that's problematic for you, except maybe something like a Tribute Summon Clayfort. But even then, you do have weirder ways to try and get better monsters than their monsters, like Leo, for example. So of course I felt that Raigeki was only so good, so I decided to actually cut it again to for other cards. So that will be rounding off our spell lineup. Now going on to the traps, it's still pretty much the same trap lineup. We have the 1 core, the 1 copy, if I don't drop it all over the place, we have the 1 copy of Torrential, and then the 1 copy of Emptiness, just because these are all fairly good one-ofs in this deck, especially core, because it can be any attribute that you want, as well as it can just help you get back your fusions and all that kind of good stuff. So that is going to round off our main deck. Now then, moving on to the extra deck, I'm actually going to go through this one pretty fast because there is only so many changes that I did put in. There's not many, but there is. So, of course, I'm just going to go through it really quickly. We have the 3 copies of El Shaddoll Nephilim because, again, we have to have 3. She's the best one. So, of course, we have to have 3 of her. Then we have the 2 copies of Winda for things like BA and the new Synchrons, which actually are going to come back because of that new structure deck. Then we have the 2 copies of Shekinaga because we have a lot of Earths, so we want to have the Shekinagas to support that many Earths. And then finally, of course, we have the 1 Anoya Talus for the Gigabyte play, as well as just to help us shut down Necrons and all that kind of stuff. So that'll be it for the fusions. Going on to the Syncers, we only do run 2 in the form of 1 Trishula and 1 Leo. Now, I did cut all the other X's Syncers from this extra deck just because of the fact that I did want to include a little bit more XYZs just because we have Gigabyte now to help us get into those XYZs. And I more or less felt that Syncers should be just another power play that you have access to rather than something that you're going to go and look to get into often. So that is why I actually did cut the Goyo Guardian and the Star Eater because of the fact that if I do ever run into Apocalypse 4 Towers, I actually well, frankly, I don't want that to happen in the first place. So I will be trying to actually prevent Apocalypse 4 Towers rather than try and combat it once it's summoned, if you guys can kind of get what I mean. So that is why I only felt that Trishula and Leo were the only 2 fairly strong synchros that I did want to include in this extra deck. Moving on, we have a couple of ranked 4s, starting off with, of course, the 1 Castell, because it's just good, simple removal. So, of course, we have to have the 1 Castell. We have the 1 copy of E-Knight, because blowing up the board whenever we're behind is really fun. We actually now have the Dark Rebellion XZ Dragon back again into this extra deck because I did want to have a beater. When I didn't have this card in my extra deck before, I found myself missing it quite a bit because of the fact that there were times when I wanted to make a big monster to get over something specific, but I didn't have this in the extra deck. So again, things like the Trapeze Magician and whatnot cannot get over it. So I did actually want to try and put the Dark Rebellion back into the extra deck again, just so I can get over key threats. And then, of course, like I flashed, we have the Trapeze Magician because it is a rank 4 Shark Fortress. And again, this and the film is always OTK, so of course that's really nice to have. And then one of the new rank 4s that I actually did include, we have 1 copy of King of the Feral Imps. Now, this is in here for the sole reason that this can search us out our Gigabyte play and help us get our Anoya Talus play as consistent as possible. As previously, whenever we did run water monsters in this deck, I believe before when I did run things like Koaki Meru Ice, the biggest issue with running those cards is the fact that it isn't consistent because of the fact that you have to be relying on drawing the water monster in order to make your Anoya Talus play or forcing a core play, which can technically be a little bit telegraphed to your opponent, and if they have outs to it, they can out it immediately because they know what your kind of play you're going to go into. So with King of the Feral Imps, it's a little bit more consistent because, again, like I said, you can search out your Gigabyte now. So again, it gives you a searchable water monster, and again, just by making a rank 4, which we can do fairly easy in this deck. So again, it just adds more consistency to our Anoya Talus play so that we don't I guess you could say we don't make it when we don't have to, and we can make it whenever we do want to. So that's what King of the Feral Imps helps us out doing. And then, of course, Yusei token. Always got to show off the Yusei token. Okay, so that'll be it for the extra deck. Moving on to the side deck, actually. We're going to start off with 2 copies of Retaliating Sea, and I guess I'll put it with the Retaliating Sea. We have 2 copies of Maxi. Of course, this is for the things like the Mirror Match as well as Necros. As Retaliating Sea against Necros is actually really, really strong just because of the fact that whatever they might use for the Ritual Summon is going to get banished. So things like Herald of the Arclight as well as things maybe like Shurit, it can be really, really helpful again to just banish those cards out of the way and just get them away so that your opponent's play is not free. So of course we have the Retaliating Sea for that. And then, of course, we also have the Maxis again to accompany the Retaliating Sea and also to just help us in things like the Burning Abyss matchup. So I believe, excuse me, that isn't it for the monsters in the side deck. We also do have the 1 copy of Thunder King, just because, again, if I'm not maining Thunder King in Shaddolls, I feel like it should be a mandatory side deck card, just because it's a light and it synergizes, again, with the Nephilim plays that we can make, and, of course, it's a walking mistake. So pretty much, again, like I said, if I'm playing Shaddolls, I usually should either mainboard this or side deck it. Moving on, we have just a singular spell card in our extra deck, or excuse me, side deck, and that is the 1 copy of Mind Control. I felt that because we are running that little Gigabyte play now, I didn't feel like Mind Control being in the main deck slot was as necessary, again, because we can't search out our water monster. So Mind Control isn't as necessary, and I found that it is actually horrendous in things like Burning Abyss and the Shaddoll Mirror Match, just because, sure, you can take your opponent's monsters and use it for a fusion play, but you're not really stopping your opponent from doing anything, as once you do that, they of course get their effects, like with Dante's or our opponent's Shaddoll effects. So because of that, I actually found it really, really bad in the mirror, and again, like I said, BA. So I didn't want to have it in the main deck, and I just more or less wanted to side it for matchups that I knew I'd need it for, like maybe like Clyfort and Necros. So we do have the 1 Mind Control in the side deck. And then moving on, we have more Clyfort Hate, which is 2 copies of Fairy Wind. This is also here for things like Yosenju, who have a lot of face-up floodgates and all that kind of stuff. So again, having the 2 Fairy Wind is really, really nice, just again to help us stop those floodgate decks, as well as to stop any pendulum-based decks like Clyfort and Ignites. Then, moving on, we have the 2 copies of Iron Wall for things like Cosmo, because, again, I feel Lancia's losing popularity for the sole fact that Cosmo really doesn't care about Lancia, because whenever they do banish their cards to summon bigger cards like Forerunner and Slip Rider, it's usually very flexible when they actually do want to summon it, because they don't necessarily have to do it immediately, as, again, Cosmo Farm Girl and Cosmo Goodwitch are both either player's turn effects, so they can just wait a turn, basically, after you have activated Lancia, wait a turn, and then summon the Forerunner or Slip Rider. So, again, I felt like that wasn't, Lancia wasn't as good as Iron Wall is now, so that is why, again, I did decide to put Iron Wall over Lancia. Then we have 2 copies of Breakthrough Skill for the generic rogue matchups that we might have to face whenever we do face weird rogue matchups, as well as, of course, for Necros and all those kinds of decks that really just need their effects to go off. Then, moving on, we have 2 copies of Royal Decree. Now, my biggest gripe with Decree really is, although it's a really, really good card against back row decks like Satellar Knights and whatnot, the fact that I'm going to actually side in myself on quite a bit of back row is kind of awkward at times. I'm really considering putting Denko Sekka over this card, just because Denko is actually another monster that can help us synergize with the deck. But for now, I'm just running Decree, and again, probably I'm going to take it out for Denko. I don't know, because the biggest issue right now is currently I don't have Denko, but with the Megaton reprints incoming very soon, I should be able to get them instead of this. But again, like I said, for now, I am running just Decree. And then, of course, finally, for the last card that I am siding the 1 copy of Crush Card Virus, just because it can wreck things like Clyfort, Yosenju, Evil Swarm, pretty much any deck that is fairly large. Again, Crush Card just helps us get over those weird rogue matchups. I'm sorry for bringing up things like Evil Storm too. It's just that I'm kind of having my locals in the back of my mind whenever basically whenever I'm setting this in, just because of the fact that at my locals, personally, this is actually a very, very strong card against most of the decks that I see in my locals. So yeah, that'll round off our 15 card side deck. So, of course, I hope you all did enjoy this brand new episode of Path to Perfection. I will be trying to upload a new episode of this deck each week, and I will be trying to stay on schedule this time around. Again, if you have any comments, questions, or anything like that to help try and improve this deck, make sure to leave it down in the comment section below, because I, again, read pretty much all the comments, and I do try and respond to as many as I possibly can. So if you do comment and have any suggestions, I will probably, or actually I should say most definitely, will read it. So again, hope you all did enjoy, and as usual, this is QRim from the Trinity of Lift, and I'll see all of you guys in the next video. Peace out.